got to get hit with something bigger.
Yes.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to another episode of SJU.
That kind of day.
It's gonna be that kind of day. It is a Thursday. We're very excited to see all of you in all of our shapes. We're going to be talking Godzilla, all of the monsters. Plus, we have special guest, Haley Mancini.
Yo!
Oh, thanks for having me, guys.
We're so excited.
Thank
You've got to check out, she has a Godzilla podcast called Godzilla vs. Podcast Zero. You can find that on Twitter at @0_Godzilla. We're so happy to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I should have gotten the memo about the plaid, but
Why do we keep doing
I
this?
don't know, Joe. We have to, okay, I'm going to text you what I'm wearing in the morning, and you text me what you're wearing, because we have to
Yeah.
stop
Fix this. This is
coordinating
getting
the
bad.
black and
So
white plaid.
funny.
Yeah. At least we're balanced and on opposite
Yeah,
sides
we're
of
not
the
next to
table.
each other
Nice.
this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's very fancy. So yes, this is Joe Starr. This is Dan Murrell. I am Danielle Radford. Now we're talking about Godzilla and the monsters that someone is the king of. That came out this weekend with new versions of classic monsters like Mothra, King Ghidorah. This is the third movie in Legendary Entertainment's connected MonsterVerse series after 2014's Godzilla and 2017's Kong Skull Island. Now, we're going to throw some of this over to our expert here.
Whoa.
So we won't be doing any spoilers. No spoilers.
No spoilers. Got it. Okay,
No
that's good to know.
spoilers. No spoilers. We want to make sure that we don't do that. But I do want to know what you thought of this, just kind of broadly.
Yes.
Compared to, and what you also thought of the 2014 and 2017 movies.
Okay, great. So, full disclosure, I didn't see Kong Skull Island, and I will before Godzilla versus King Kong, but I'm not a big King Kong fan.
You're a Godzilla lady.
Yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
Godzilla lady, and I have like the perceived continued rival where I'm like, I don't even want to give my money to King Kong. I saw the film last night. I got to go to a press screening thanks to KPCC. Shout out, they were awesome and interviewed me afterwards. I loved it. I thought it was so fun. The dialogue was kind of like, I saw Dan's review. I respect it. I have some points that I will get to, but I thought, yeah, of course, like the dialogue's a little schlocky. The human part is a little bit like, okay, but what are you there for? You're there for some monster fights, and they don't disappoint. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. I was like, I'm at this press screening, so I'm with a bunch of journalists that are taking notes, and I'm going, I'm just like trying to contain my screams the whole time. I was.
Did you do your rights like, could you not? I'm just...
He was pretty cool. He like, I could see the people down the what?
Sorry.
What?
It's not that bad. We're
What
not
the-
like, please, sir. I am trying to take notes on
I'm
this
taking
film.
this movie. Well, no, but they're watching this properly,
Yes,
and
that's-
I'm sitting there, like, I could see out of the corner of my eye two guys down the row being like...
It's a little more muted.
I'm
They're a
going,
little more
like, I can't contain myself. I'm definitely, like, an active watcher at films, too, so...
That's great.
I loved it.
So what do you think about just the MonsterVerse in general, how they're
yeah.
doing? And especially I want to know about any feelings that you might have about that and some of the older franchises as well.
Yeah. So I also felt that this film particularly did great fan service. Excellent fan service. Tips to all the old franchise stuff. There's doesn't spoil anything, but there's a great tip to the Mothra twins. There's a tip to Godzilla's evolution through time. I liked the 2014 one. I thought a lot of people saying that there wasn't enough monster in it. I was like, well, then you haven't seen a Godzilla film, because most of it is he shows up in the cold open, doesn't show up until like the end of the second act anyway. So get with it.
It's Godzilla, Panzer tanks, Godzilla.
Exactly. Stock footage.
He's a diva. You can only have him on screen for so many minutes before you have to start paying him extra.
I thought the 2014 one probably could have been like 15% shorter and not in the monster parts, and it would have been perfect. I think the American films could probably take a page out of the Japanese films books and say, like, hey, most of those are like 90 minutes. We could probably do that. You know, we could probably get closer to that. But that being said, it's really hard to helm. I guess my feeling is the two hardest franchises to helm are probably Star Wars and Godzilla. And because they are long, Godzilla is the longest film franchise in the world. It's also from a different culture that we translate over here, and it has an extremely dedicated fan base. But when you translate it over here, you also have to educate the American audience on all of these monsters. He had to do Doherty had to do so much with expanding out this universe. So I have mad respect for him, and the difference between Star Wars fans and Godzilla fans is Godzilla fans are extremely forgiving. Star Wars fans are extremely critical. so Godzilla fans are always like, "Oh, was there a monster fight?" And then I had a great time.
The Godzilla fans I've heard from have not been that forgiving. I would just like to point out.
Forgiving to you, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. I'm talking about the film. No, they're going to.
They're going to destroy you.
They're going to destroy you.
They're forgetting the movies.
You made some terrible errors, Dan.
Apparently so.
I like that most Godzilla fans are doing. We're just happy to be here, guys. We're
That's
just happy
exactly
to
it.
watch Monsters versus
They've had
Monsters.
some terrible things happen to them. They had the Roland Emmerich thing happen to them.
Okay, no.
Oh
That
my
was
God.
an injustice against everyone, Joe.
Okay.
No, you know
Yes.
what? I'm challenging you
shared
all
that.
right now. Say one nice thing about the Roland Emmerich film. Joe.
I listen to Come With Me more than anyone should ever admit that they listen to Come With Me on the Godzilla soundtrack.
Counts. Haley.
That Zilla got destroyed in Final Wars. They got created, and then Godzilla immediately uses his atomic fire breath to light up Zilla, who didn't have atomic fire breath.
See?
So yes, that was a great little
So
sequence.
quickly solved.
yeah.
Dan.
Matthew Broderick knew what movie he was in.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's a count.
Well
There
said,
you go.
well said, well said, well
that's
said.
good.
Okay.
As for me, I will say that the ad campaign was exhaustive.
It truly was.
It helped me nap.
It was everywhere and very, very tiring. So, does anyone here, I know you're such a huge Godzilla fan. Tell me about these monsters.
About the ones in the new one?
About all of them, any of them. I want to
okay.
hear. I want to hear your Mothra thoughts. I want to hear your Rodan thoughts.
Well, Rodan's my favorite. Rodan has always been my favorite because he's like Godzilla's best frenemy. Sometimes they're at odds and sometimes they're friends, and I just love that because it's like a comic book type thing where sometimes the villain, but sometimes they're okay. So I thought this movie, by the way, did a great job with Rodan and a great job with his design and everything. I was like, oh, come on. I kept being like, come on, this is amazing during the whole thing. I was geeking out. And Mothra is amazing. As my friend Jake Goldman says, our friend Jake Goldman says, Mothra is the original feminist icon. And I'm like, well, original maybe not, but she's one of the best, for sure.
One of the largest.
One of the largest, for
probably
sure.
the largest.
The largest, yeah. I love Mothra. I also thought Doherty handled her brilliantly in this film as well. So good. So good. And Ghidorah, man, Ghidorah's the big baddie. He's the worst of them all. Three-headed dragon.
So sometimes he's a king and sometimes he's not.
Yeah, sometimes he's just Monster Zero. Like in my personal favorite Godzilla film, which is Godzilla versus Monster Zero, he's Monster Zero. He's controlled by the Xylians. He is an alien in those, and
And then he's got the three
I don't
heads.
know most of the words, so I'm glad that you're here.
Yeah, well, there you go. The
Very glad
Xylians,
that
so
you're
they're
here.
Planet X. They control it. That movie starred James Dean's best friend Nick Adams. It was great.
These facts are amazing.
Yeah, you guys should. We should go watch it. That's actually really good. It's a good example of well done design in the '60s that carries forward. But it's also interesting to know that these monsters also generally represent stuff that was going on in the world at the time. So Ghidorah originally was representative of China, the three-headed monster, and Rodan was originally representative of the Soviet Union too, by the way. So of course you see that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Joe gets it. Obviously they've
Dreams.
evolved beyond some of these things, but
Who was Mothra representative of?
I think Mothra's. You know what? Somebody will probably grill me for this, but I'm trying to remember.
Ex-wife.
My ex-wife. Oh, my ex-wife, Marthra. Not Martha.
Why did you say that name? Note that for the Australia.
I think she's kind of like Mother Earth.
Mothra.
I think she's kind of like Mother Earth. I never, like I said, I always big fan of Rodan, so I'm sure somebody will nail me
You're
for
a
this,
Rodan
but
stan. I get
I'm
it.
a Rodan stan, so yeah.
Well, the Mother Earth thing makes sense because, like,
The twins.
The twins, but also like the Earth responding to humans and the virus stuff is real deep Godzilla too, right?
Yeah, exactly. That is man's own folly, enumerated. And that's, I have to say, Dan, this is part of your review that I take issue with. I'm sorry. I know that you talked about how that it is talking about, it's cliche talking about Godzilla, that we are the parasite, da-da-da-da-da.
Well, not about Godzilla talking about movies. It was the fifth movie I've seen in the last year.
But guess who started it?
Godzilla, I understand.
Yeah. But Godzilla is not a cliche.
But I will counter. I can't not going into spoilers. But the way the movie does it, which is essentially just a lecture on a video screen, did not do it for me. Because I liked.
But don't say. You didn't say that in your review.
Well, I have to do them. I have to do them in one. I have to do them in one take. No editing whatsoever. I literally have notes. I have paper taped under the camera. And I can only do 2 sheets because otherwise they fold in, and I just have to look under the camera at handwritten notes, and I have no editing.
The point is, that is amazing.
I can't fit everything into my review.
Dan's a very sweet boy.
But I acknowledge one of my big things in the first Godzilla movie, the 2014 one, that I fought against was the fact that the Godzilla not being in the movie enough was in the spirit of the original films, and I liked how that movie did it. So it's not that I think that anything in the spirit of a Godzilla movie is cliche. I felt that while I acknowledge that plot point is something that's in a lot of Godzilla movies, I don't think that movie handled it very well, because
I do agree with that.
It was very, very just sort of like, I'm going to sit down and explain the plot to you for 5 minutes. I think it could have been done in a much more interesting
way. But what was the real plot? A bunch of monsters fighting.
There we go.
That's what it was.
I was going to say there's not one, but
speaking of a bunch of monster fighting, obviously there are other these huge big monster movies. Do you like any of these other ones? You got your Cloverfield, you got your Pacific Rims. I love a Pacific Rim. I love robot dance fighting. I think that's amazing.
I like it all. I love any. Honestly, I love kaiju. I love camp too. I mean, really anything that falls under that. I mean, yeah, I love a good horror, like a Cloverfield that's getting some Lovecraftian sort of stuff. I'm always going to love that as well. I mean, Godzilla's the numero uno, of course, but but I like them all. I thought people were really mean to Pacific Rim for no good reason. I thought that was a great film.
I like Pacific Rim a lot.
Yeah, it was great.
I like Cloverfield.
Yeah.
I like Cloverfield a lot.
Yeah.
I really like it.
Did you guys see Colossal?
I love Colossal.
I haven't seen that
Colossal
one.
is so good.
Colossal is so incredibly good.
When did that one come out?
A couple years ago?
Yeah, I want to say late 2017.
It's Hathaway, right?
Anne Hathaway,
it's Anne
Jason
Hathaway.
Sudeikis.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, she is the monster, and you don't.
Yeah.
It is so good and so funny, and it's obviously about more than just Anne Hathaway doing funny poses, but it also has Anne Hathaway doing funny poses, which is pretty great.
Oh, I got that one fell into my when I was in a sinkhole of having just gotten dumped. I think I was like not seeing films at that point. I was like,
that's not a good one.
I believe that's when I went to Patagonia for a while, not the store, the bottom of the world. So I missed that one.
I like that you're emotionally you follow the path of kaiju sometimes, where you're just like, I've been defeated, time to go into exile.
But I will come back. Yeah, I'll go to the bottom of the world, regenerate, and come back anew.
That's perfect.
It's good to follow your fandom.
Well, so I want to know just a little bit about, like, you've got this deep love for these monster movies, but they are also very destructive, and it's all about punching a city in the face.
Right.
So why do you think so many people love watching buildings just get socked? There was like a whole video game series that was the same premise.
It's great.
Which was a terrible movie. It's fine.
What, the...
Rampage.
Oh, I was going to say, I thought Rampage was stupid fun. I thought that was ridiculous. Like when he jumps out of the plane and he's attached to the guy and he goes, or the guy says something like, I didn't see this happening today or something like that. It's so ridiculous.
I like the city destruction for the same reason that I have a soft spot in my heart for even non-monster city destruction. Like if Roland Emmerich's Moonfall is not financed, I consider that a crime against humanity. I want to see a movie where the moon falls on the planet.
It's gotta happen.
It has to happen.
Mr. Shows planted the idea with that sketch where they're like, we're gonna blow
up the moon.
Now it's gotta fall. I think it responds to an idea that I think as a species, we're top dog, and we do know that we're there. I mean, we kind of have this predilection for putting sociopaths on top that are slowly destroying us all or quickly destroying us all. And I think there's something cathartic to being like, but what if we're not top dog? What if we're not? What if something comes in and is like, you're building with all your science and your brain power that you made? Gone.
Put a claw in it.
Yeah, put a claw on it. Sorry, you're smaller than you thought. I think there's a inherent discomfort that we as a species feel with where we've gotten as a species, and with this kind of we have a discomfort of being like the apex of the apex.
So like the maximum version of like taking some responsibility off of yourself, like it's like the monster version I'm moving back in with my parents. Like I'm tired of dealing with health insurance.
Yes, totally.
Godzilla's going to flatten.
Like, I mean, it's like all of mythology, right? I mean, we are very uncomfortable with the potential that we might be it. And at the top, and that there's nothing above us. It's a very like we want to go back, move back into our parents' basement. We want to go back in the womb. Yeah. So I think there's something that's nice about like achieving that balance. That's why you can still read Shakespeare all these years later and still find a catharsis in it. His whole thing was the great chain of being, and weirdly, these crazy kaiju films kind of fulfill a similar purpose.
I mean, I'm scared of most animals. Like, if there's a wasp in the room, it's the alpha. So I can relate to not being the most powerful.
You're his kaiju.
No. I'm not.
He's saying, but he just wonders what the hell you're doing. He's like, oh God.
I'm a very frightened
he's running from me. Yeah.
So this actually brings us up to a really good article that we've got up on Fandom. Our own Eric Goldman did a piece on it on Fandom.com about whether or not it's called Could Godzilla and Humanity Actually Coexist? And this is something that I want to talk about because a big part of this movie, especially what they're talking about in the marketing, is the idea that in that world, everybody know about Godzilla. Mm-hmm. He's like old news. Everyone knows that he's around and that he's, again, punching holes into cities. Mm-hmm. And I have to say this. Director Michael Dougherty said, he called him a wise old dragon that has some wisdom to share with us if we're brave enough to enter his cave. And I just thought that's okay.
That guy smokes more pot than I do.
That's just an amazing quote. So we're talking about people adjusting to the idea of Godzilla, and it's not just, could we do it? We've adjusted to things before, but how does the world kind of adjust to that? Like, what do you do? Are you, does this show suddenly become Godzilla Watch? Are we starting to make, we're starting to invite people, Godzilla experts onto TV shows?
Well, I think the first thing someone does, and hopefully me or someone at this table, because I want good things for all of you, is figure out like the best ways to monetize it.
Yeah.
Like what is Uber for Godzilla attacks, or like
oh yeah, absolutely.
What's my like weird fake pill that I sell that's like Godzilla won't be able to see if you take these pills. They're $150.
This rock keeps away bears, Lisa. This rock keeps away tigers. Do you see any tigers?
I want reaction videos. Not if it's a bad one, but if it's just like someone sees Godzilla going by, and then you get a bunch of ones like new Godzilla sighting. Click here for our reaction. I can't wait for those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those will be great.
Elders react to Godzilla.
Elders react to Godzilla. I love it. See, and I would have loved a little. I will say I would have loved. To this point, a little bit of that in this film, a little bit more of that tongue in cheek.
Because the last one ended right with like a bunch of people like pointing and being like, "This is cool."
There's
next
literally
to like
a running banner that said
right?
Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there
Sorry,
you go.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
he's great. Yeah, I think they could have probably leaned into that a little bit more in this film, but also that is something that comes through the Toho films a lot too. Is that once I mean, there's of course varying degrees, and it depends who the director is and what they're handling. But for many of the eras of Godzilla, they're like, yeah, we knew he's here. Yeah, whatever. So I thought that was actually a really good translation by Dougherty also. But I would have loved to see a little bit more of that, like, kind of, how do stupid people like us lean into his
Godzilla
existence?
in the age of social media.
Yeah. I'll do
Godzilla
it.
vines.
Look, I'll do the evolution of Godzilla if we want to get into that and put that up on the channel.
Probably. Yeah.
Yes.
We should actually. Yeah, that'd be really good.
Different ways for us to monetize that. And so, we could do things like getting to my next point, because also on Fandom, Alistair Gray put how a major city would respond to a Godzilla attack. My first thought, Godzilla tracker. It's like a Santa tracker. That you can
Yeah,
find,
like
that
the
you can
NORAD Santa tracker.
You can get an app on your phone. We tag them. We tag all of the kaiju, and then you can follow where they are. And then if you are, same with the thing with bird watchings. If you're a kaiju watcher, you can go out in a safe distance and you can get your photos, and then you can check it off of your kaiju list.
Oh, yeah. Pokemon Go, Kaiju Go.
This is also the only way I think mortal engines make sense. Is if there's a world where there's like 10 kaiju walking around, then like you abandon the cities and stay mobile.
That makes more sense. Yeah.
Pacific Rim touched on it a little bit. This idea of after a while you're like, I'm tired of this. And,
I'm moving inland.
that would be my thing. Is I know a lot of people say like, well, it's earthquakes. With people live in Los Angeles, there's earthquakes all the time. Like, yeah, but there's like a bad earthquake every like 30 to 40 years. Not
Right.
If you're going by the older Godzilla movies, like by the 7th or 8th time that my town got flattened by Godzilla, I think maybe I would move.
Well, yeah.
I might move inland.
Well, it's like Marvel too. Like no one should live in New York anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
New York's
what are they
the
doing?
worst place to live.
Yeah.
Like the moment a portal opens in the sky, we're moving to Kansas City. That's where we're gonna live now.
Yeah, but then you have those people that are like, oh, yeah, like I'm gonna move to Kansas City. I love New York.
Like I can go
get a slice of pizza there, huh?
Yeah, like I can smear like this.
Yeah.
It's so much cheaper to live in Kansas City, and there are no alien portals.
And there are no alien
For now,
portals.
yeah.
But I will
now.
say, by the way, a counterpoint to moving inland and what Godzilla as a franchise does so well is the Japanese are constantly dealing with, tsunamis, earthquakes, Fukushima, the nuclear bombs, which was definitely our fault. But really, like as a society, they haven't really had a choice, and they've had to do this over and over and over again, which I think is one thing that is going to always make Godzilla hard to translate to an American audience. We live short-term consequence. We haven't had a major war on our soil. We haven't had the type of thing that we haven't had atomic bombs dropped on our cities. Knock on wood. We haven't had.
I think that was fake.
Under our bunker table. Oh God! We haven't, but we haven't had a Fukushima thing. We haven't had like all these types of things that create that force us to live in the consequences of our actions. Even like Katrina and stuff like that. It's like our country's so big; those are just kind of blips to us. So I think that is one of the things that will always be really hard to translate to an American audience, is that the natural depth that comes with what Godzilla was created upon, where it's like, oh man.
Whereas
this
us
is a
watching, we're
lasting-
like, he showed up and smashed Tokyo again. Like, okay. And it's
Okay,
like,
exactly.
That's the
I don't know,
point.
send the military after him.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. And move. Yeah.
We have the best military. Yeah.
Well, no, and I think that's really good. Also, do you think it was a big part of the Roland Emmerich rollout was it would have those signs that say, "This is as big as Godzilla's foot." Do you think?
Oh my God!
Do
I
you
forgot
think
about
that
those.
you could do something where it's like you could have Godzilla tracks and to turn that into a city park?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
You definitely could.
Yeah, put that
man.
on, put in some playgrounds, throw up some flowers.
Yeah,
for the kids to
build
play.
around
Weirdly bleak playground.
Look, it's going to be a weirdly bleak world if at any moment you could get really stepped on.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is fair. This
By
is completely
Godzilla.
fair.
Oh man, do you think at any point we could actually people would start weaponizing them, or even
for
just,
sure.
Yeah, or even just using them to smelt things? There's all that fire breath.
Oh yeah.
Industrious Godzilla.
Because do the Flintstone thing.
I mean, the conspiracy theory market around Godzilla alone would be a multi-million-dollar market. Just the idea
Absolutely.
that the InfoWars of the Godzilla world.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
Like where he
Mothra
came
truthers.
from, Martha Truth,
Yeah.
Mothra.
Marthra.
No, that's
Now we're saying
Joe's
Marthra now.
ex-wife.
Yeah, that would certainly be something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh God, yes.
And they do in a lot of the Toho Godzillas, they do play with controlling and you'll see it in the new movie. But there definitely is. There's something that even this director really considered that as well.
The idea of controlling the big kaiju, or I guess they're not really kaijus in these, but controlling all these big monsters.
Yeah, like weaponizing, seeing what you can do with that, and that happens a lot in the Toho Godzilla. I mean, that's Monster Zero, which, by the way, I recommend watching that one before going to see this one because it has Ghidorah and Rodan in it.
Are there any that, like, if people are like, that was cool, like, are there a couple of, like, the old school original films that people should definitely watch?
I mean, you should watch Shin Godzilla. It's not just one of the best. It maybe is the best Godzilla film, and it's one of my favorite films of all time. But it's just generally a great film. It's like, I mean, the first half is like Doctor Strangelove, and then the second half, the floor just is pulled out from under you. It's just a great. It was the guy that did Evangelion and all that stuff. Right? Yeah. And that movie's just incredible. And of course, 1954, and then I would always recommend Godzilla vs. Monster Zero because it's it's just kind of like a classically good Godzilla film and a mark of the 60s.
What about doesn't he have a baby?
Oh, Son of Godzilla?
There's a baby Godzilla, right?
Well, and then there's Mecha Godzilla.
Yeah, Mecha Godzilla.
Which I'm always into. Again, more robots.
Yeah.
Does Mecha Godzilla at any point give a child the thumbs up?
If he did, a missile would come out of it.
Yeah, there he is.
Because he shoots missiles out of his. See, those are missiles. There's
the baby.
God, he looks like he looks like a weird mud. Oh man, that guy is
like
so ugly. Manila is.
Hey, will you go back to Mechagodzilla, JTE? Because, man, they really just repainted him for the Dragon Zord.
Yeah.
I never really realized it.
100%.
Man, yeah, they... I think they just found the suit.
And then just
painted it green.
Retouched it. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this one, the original Godzilla versus King Kong movie? It's quite something. I watched that one a lot when I was...
It's bananas.
Yeah.
Boo.
Hey! I think there's some really good moments in there. I think the way that they set up, they do a really great kind of bait and switch at the beginning of that film where you think the monster on King Kong's island is that octopus, and then he takes it out, and you're like, no, it's this giant gorilla, and that's cool. But the movie's pretty racist. There's natives painted dark, and then they cheerfully give some kids cigarettes and stuff like that. I don't know. I think I'm excited for the new one to come out. But just for the record, by the way, there was no other ending. King Kong always won. There was a rumor that the Japanese version Godzilla won.
There was like a Rocky Apollo.
Yeah,
situation.
Yeah. Now talk about conspiracy theories.
The unfilmed third fight.
Yeah. So I don't know. What do you guys think of that? Do you guys remember that one?
I watched it a lot when I was, especially particularly younger. I haven't seen it in quite a while.
I hadn't either until I watched it for the podcast, and then I was like, whoa.
It's weird because there was like the King Kong that I knew that's like the Americanized, well, not Americanized, it is American. The American King Kong, like the 30s, and then I think by that time I'd seen the Jeff Bridges version and even like the Linda Hamilton son of Kong, King Kong Returns. But then watching the Godzilla versus King Kong movie, it's weird because it's almost it's sort of the reverse of what we're doing now, which was like it was the Japanese take on an American icon.
Yeah.
So it was I remember like, King Kong's kind of sillier than I remember, but it's because they were like molding King Kong to be more in line with the spirit of their films in the same way that. Less so with this, but more Roland Emmerich did, where he took Godzilla and was like, well, I'm going to make this the Hollywood blockbuster version of Godzilla. So,
actually, would you guys like to hear a fun little story about that 1998 one and what a wild, wild disaster it was?
Yes, absolutely.
So I have this film lit critic book about all the Godzilla films, and I'll provide you the author maybe another time so that we can give him credit. But he summed all the stuff about all the histories. Apparently, there was this director Jan Bort that really wanted to do it, and he was like, but you need at least two monsters. I'm not going to do it without two monsters. and my quote for the price is 130 million. And they're like, that's crazy because it's going to be 200 million. Let's go to Roland Emmerich and Devlin because they just did Independence Day and they made alien weird stuff from the 50s. Okay. So they went to them, and people think it may have been a producer's situation like the musical where they were like, we don't want this, so we're going to pitch the worst situation. And so they had like Papadopoulos or whatever, who Matthew Broderick's character is named after, their SFX person build that terrible model of Godzilla. And then they went to Toho in Japan, had a meeting, and it was under a cloth. And then they kept asking about it. So finally they pulled the cloth off, and there was 2 minutes of dead silence as they just stared at it. And then they said, this is very new. We can't speak about it right now. We need to go home. And they ended the meeting. Wow. And then the next day they came back and they were like, in classic kind of producer's fashion, I think they probably thought, well, you guys made Independence Day, that was a hit. So they said, it's new, go for it. So that's what it was. So this could have just been a dare to push each other off a fucking cliff.
Well, that's all right.
We get one.
We get one.
I'm sorry.
It felt like that.
We try to replace it with Frolic. We should have worked together.
Yes.
Well, off of a frolicking cliff.
Yeah.
This has been some great Godzilla talk. I'm super happy about it. We're going to go to some fan questions next. But before we get to the fan questions, y'all, SJU is now Fandom Entertainment. I want everyone to count how many times I say that from now on. SJU is now Fandom Entertainment.
You will say it for at least one more year.
We are the same people. We just have more shapes. Everything is great. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Hit the bell so that you get notifications every time that we post new videos. The stories that I pointed out earlier, you can find links in the description down below. And so now, let's get to answering some of your questions. There we go. I wasn't waiting for you,
We weren't
Ryan.
even waiting.
No,
We're just
I'm not
giving up.
Yeah.
Not waiting for you anymore, Ryan. All right, so our first fan question is by B. Thompson. Ooh, what is your favorite action/fighting movie that is not a huge blockbuster movie? If no one knows right away, we all know what I'm going to say. And it's going to be Mortal Kombat.
Oh, heck yeah.
We already know that that's
Understood.
going to be my answer.
Best laser tag soundtrack ever created.
It's so good, and none of it holds up, and I don't care. It looks worse and worse every year. Reptile is a nightmare, but it's such good fun. It's got that great lady head scissors takedown.
Oh,
It's
from Sonya?
from Sonya Blade. I liked that version of Johnny Cage. I don't know. It's a perfect. Yeah, it's a perfect movie.
When it evolves into camp, that's just a great thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And then they
thing.
took it a little too far in part 2, but that's fine.
Sure.
No one remembers Annihilation.
No.
I do.
I love. Oh, wait, no, sorry. I thought you meant the Natalie Portman movie. I love
Very different.
Very different movie.
We would never
Different
compare those two
Annihilation, yes.
Annihilations. I wouldn't do that to
Exactly.
Annihilation.
Did you guys ever see a movie called Red Belt? It's with
Heard of it.
Yeah, it's got Chiwetel in it.
I think you just got something from JTE.
JT, you saw it. Who directed? It's a weird director. Yeah, Mammoth directed it. It's about MMA.
Oh my god, I do remember that.
Awesome.
It's so bizarre. It was one of my very last. I happened to see it at Blockbuster rentals that I can remember before those things really started to cease to exist. Yeah, super weird movie, worth checking out. It's more just about, I guess, the headspace around fighting and training and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool.
Than it is about like, here's some dope action sequences. But
Right.
Just for a mammoth martial arts movie, that's worth seeking out.
Are there women in it?
Yes, it's about him training a lady.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I'm trying. It's been a long time. I think she's it's actually kind of a cool balance, if I remember correctly. She's a domestic abuse survivor, and so it's. I don't know. It's sort of about the boundaries of him trying to like train her and her getting comfortable enough to actually roll around and do MMA and things like
that's
that.
cool.
And yeah. If I remember correctly, it's sort of weird. I also might have made up 75% of what I just said because it's been a while.
That's fair. That's how
fair.
I'm feeling about my selection too. I was like, oh, crud. I don't. I love the good, the bad, and the weird.
It's one of my favorite movies.
I love that movie. It's
side of the table got very excited.
It's Korean, right?
Yeah.
It's not Hong Kong. Man, that movie's great. I don't know. It's like a Western meets.
I don't know what.
Kung Fu. I don't know. It's so.
It's got one of my favorite chase sequences ever filmed.
Ever.
Yeah, that's a fun.
I don't know. Just go watch it.
Yeah, especially if you like Kung Fu Hustle and stuff
Yes.
like that.
If you
sort
like
of
Kung Fu Hustle, it's like
kind
that.
of ridiculous action movies. Like
Plus
you
a
should check it out.
Western.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just keep talking about The Raid all the time.
I was thinking about the Raid. That was my other one. Yeah.
But I would also say to stay early John Woo.
Yeah.
Hard Boiled, The Killers,
Yep. Nice.
The Killer, stuff like that. I think if you're looking for the genesis, the proto-genesis of a lot of what action has been the last 30 years, you can look at his movies and they grow from there. And then they were taken, those conventions, well, he himself took the conventions here, but also the conventions were taken and brought to other movies, and then they've kind of grown out of that to what we see today.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, some of the John Woo's notable earlier works, not in America, I think are really great action movies that are not blockbusters, quote unquote.
Agreed.
Quote unquote. Okay, well that's great.
And if you put Rumble in the Bronx in front of me, I will watch it.
Oh yeah, every day, all day.
Yeah.
The one where they're in New York, but the mountains
Yes.
are clearly visible in the distance. Like
that's the one.
Okay.
Those famous Bronx mountains.
The famous mountains of the Bronx.
Well, yeah, it's like the beautiful Santa Anita's in the northeast town where the Gilmore Girls live.
Yeah.
Where you're like,
Okay.
it's snowing, and look up, it's Burbank.
That bothers me when I watch The Office. Anytime that they're driving around Scranton, and I know what city, I know what streets in Los Angeles look like, and then obviously Los Angeles City streets.
It's like the beginning of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is filmed like when she does that for that first song in downtown New York, which was filmed a block from my old job downtown LA.
Oh my
and
gosh,
now I
it's
can
so
never
funny.
unsee it.
It's very hard.
The Seinfeld building was in Koreatown. I didn't know that, but that's true.
I did not know
I live in
that.
Koreatown.
either.
Yeah, because I didn't know that, and then we had somebody was shooting a sketch that was we were kind of making fun of a New York LA rivalry, and he knew exactly where the building was and did an outside shot, and yep, it is.
Wow.
It definitely is. I was like,
Crazy.
oh, wow,
Yeah.
it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was the big one? Oh, the other big one for me was Dexter, where it was like Santa Monica is not Miami. They look very different. Long Beach is not Miami.
They always try to weirdly light it differently. Like we're not gonna
You know, the Miami filter.
Yes.
They'll never recognize Los Angeles if it's orange. No, it's still working. I know that it's Los Angeles.
I see we had to blur out the in and out, guys.
There's a Miami Wood sign in the distance. Like, okay.
Okay, we get it. So here's a second question, and this is for Andy, and I guess this is going to be specifically for us three at the table. How long does it usually take the SJ crew to put together an honest trailer? I guess that depends.
If we forgot about it or not.
The average honest trailer, I would say a week.
Yeah, about a week.
From we're all watching the movie and taking notes to sending them to whomever is taking lead on the script to revisions through editing. So it's usually like 2 to 3 days watching, 1 to 2 days writing, 2 to 3 days editing.
Yeah, we have it blew me away because I was like, I'm just watching a movie at work. But you're taking notes and we're doing different, run times for specific things we might want to call out, and that can take a little bit longer than you would think.
Yeah, it really makes you hate watching films.
Because then you start, it's all the stuff that you start noticing that you can't stop noticing once you start getting into it.
I do wonder that, because I love honest trailers, and I always, and I think you guys do such a great job with them. I definitely always I'm like, do they start just picking stuff out inadvertently by accident now?
I have two
it
brains,
depends,
unless
yeah.
I hate a movie and then I start.
Yeah,
Really
there's been,
doing it.
like
Yeah.
I know there's stuff where like in the theater, and I know we've talked about that before, Dan, where it's like you just immediately tune out. You're like, okay, I know exactly what this one is going to be.
Yep.
Like as you're in the theater, but
Yeah.
there's only been a few things like Suicide Squad was definitely one.
Oh,
I was too overloaded by Suicide Squad to even think about
it's a
the honest
20-minute trailer
Yeah.
at the beginning. It was like
The
just
last two
nonstop.
Transformers I started writing. Interstellar, strangely.
Really?
Right afterwards was the genesis of the honest trailer for that movie.
You just like came back and were just immediately like,
Yeah.
but there's only been a few things where I was like, and then there's a lot where I'll watch and I'll realize I've only taken like 4 notes because I was like, that was fine.
Yeah.
I gotta stretch 7 pages out of that was fine. Shoot.
And do it without being nitpicky, which is like it's a balance because you
Yeah.
want to make fun of the thing, but sometimes things are really good.
Yeah,
So
sometimes his hat is at a different angle. Yeah, like that's not.
Yeah.
that's not necessarily what we do.
Yeah.
Someone can do that.
Somebody will.
You guys take that idea and run with it. Some channel.
Yeah, somebody's probably made a Twitter handle.
Movie hats.
Movie hats, yeah. That's movie hats out of place.
Sometimes we do though, like the great one, the really good movies. We'll have to get down to like I just remember Empire Strikes Back. Like our third best joke was sometimes they say Han and sometimes they say Han. It's like you go with what you got,
Right.
Yeah.
All right, and so last is Trent. I love this question.
Sorry. And then the
sorry,
only
no,
other
please.
exception was the Doctor Who trailer took a year.
Oh my God.
Star Trek
That was
The
a
Next-
year,
Star
right?
Trek: The Next Generation also took
a long
many
time.
months.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the ones where we do all of them at once, and I did not have. I was not working on the Who one, so I did not have
played,
to Who.
Radford.
All the rest of them had to Who. I was Who-less.
Months of
Doctor Who.
And I'm the one that likes Who.
Like, how is this?
I'm the one who likes Doctor Who.
Oh,
It's fine.
that would be my luck.
Yeah.
I would like
that'd be
walk in
fine.
and they'd be like, "Well, we just finished all the Godzilla ones." They'd be like,
Yeah. Cool.
All right,
cool,
I'll
cool, cool,
just
cool. Yeah.
I'm gonna go get a bagel.
I'll just go frolic myself? Okay,
yeah,
I'll just go frolic myself.
myself. Off that frolicking cliff I go. That's what I said. You two.
I remember.
I remember that's exactly what I said. And so lastly, we've got a question from Trent, which is, what is the stupidest / worst trip you've ever gone on? I have mine ready if you guys
Go
would
ahead,
like
because
to
I'm trying to
start.
think. Yeah.
So, when I was younger, I decided to follow a boy. Don't do that.
Oh no.
Oh, I did this. Yeah, it was never turns out well.
It never turned out well. So when I was living in Seattle, he was doing this thing where different summers he would be a bus driver for these luxury places.
Oh,
or,
yeah.
a cabin out in the woods, and they would need someone to run the tours, things like
Yeah.
that. So he was a bus driver in Aspen. And so I was going to go spend the winter in Aspen. And to get there, I didn't have any money, so it wound up being a 3-day-long Greyhound trip. During the course of that trip, I got to hear about someone's murder.
What?
Good.
Not them being murdered, but them having murdered, and how happy they were to finally go home to their beautiful, made sure to tell me, black wife and mixed children. I got called Janet Jackson in Utah twice. I was defended by a.
Mormon guy was like, I love her, the nation.
Everywhere I go, just everyone's doing it. There was I can't think of the name. The Pennsylvania Dutch.
The Amish?
The Amish. There was a Amish family, very nice. They kind of stuck to themselves, and they were on the bus. It was a young husband, his young wife, and their kid.
Sorry, that took a minute to just.
Yeah.
Yep, there
Is
it
that
is.
allowed?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that there are some exceptions
Okay.
depending on certain things. Like they know that buses exist.
Yeah. Or is it because Greyhound is like crappy enough?
It's slower than taking a cart and buggy, so it's deemed acceptable.
So during one of the times when someone was like getting in my face, like, Janet Jackson, where you going? Just quietly, and they had not spoken to anyone or each other for, I think it was about a day that they were on the bus. The boy just starts, the young man just starts slowly walking in front of me and staring down this dude, and that was the day I got my chastity defended by the Amish.
What?
That's amazing! This took a turn I did not expect.
Who also called you Janet Jackson?
But that would have been
You
fun.
leave Janet Jackson alone.
I loved her
Brother
music
Hamish
during
loves doing
Rumschlager.
it. Brother Hamish loves the If video.
We always put on the remix while we're raising the barn. And so, yeah, then I finally made it to Aspen, which does not look like what every time there's a movie or anything that takes place
No.
in Aspen, they actually film it in Breckenridge.
Yep.
Aspen is basically just old houses converted to be restaurants and things.
Got it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
very rich people up in the hills.
Very rich
Yeah.
people in the
You were
hills.
saved by the Amish.
I was saved by
Mountains.
the
That's so
Amish.
nice.
So that is the stupidest trip I've ever been on.
Wow, that's a great one.
Mine are also all bus related. This was just me stupid on a trip. I used to go to, when I was in college, I had a summer gig where I would just go do improv in Florida, which was great. But I took the Greyhound to get there. And at this point, I was still very much just like I have not spent very much time in cities, dumb boy. And so our Greyhound layover was at like 3 a.m. in downtown Birmingham. Oh. And Greyhound stops are designed to be in the dumbest places, no matter like where they are. It's just going to be in the bad place. Like even where I got on in Bowling Green, Kentucky, it was like in the crap part of Bowling Green, Kentucky. Somehow, where it's like it's a field, but then one shifty guy who's like, hey! They're like, that's where we'll put the Greyhound stop.
With a plastic knife.
And I was also still a smoker, so I was like, I don't want to smoke near people like that are standing, in lighted areas on this property that's being like filmed by security cameras. I'll walk a block or two away, and I just like hung out. And at the time I was like, I think I'm just having a talk about stand-up comedy with just like 4 strange dudes that are circling me, and I don't know how I'm alive. Like I don't, because I look back and I was like, they were just like deciding if they were going to just mug me, because they definitely were deciding if they were going to mug me. But I guess I knew enough like Carlin and Rock and Eddie Griffin and like stand up that they were like, let him go.
Let him go. He's all right.
I definitely should have died that night. And so that was just me being stupid on a trip.
Your charm saved you.
Yay!
Yay! Haley, do you have any?
I have so many. It's hard to pick from because I went to like all lower 48 states in a car with my family. We were like a big road trip family. But so there's one where like my brother jumped out of our minivan on the Indiana highway after going, I can't take this family anymore.
You literally lived in the middle of the sunshine?
I know. I was like, every time I see those movies, I'm like, wannabes. and then the Indiana, but like my mom was like, no. And then you just hear, woo! And then the Indiana patrolman came and got him and brought him back to us. And my mom was like, she just wouldn't make eye contact.
I want to know how that conversation played out.
I can't really remember. I remember all I remember is that I had Donkey Kong Country on my Game Boy, so I was like, I'm just gonna bury my head in this. But probably like my worst trip, I feel like it's worth bringing back because it had to do with where I landed in Patagonia afterwards. I think Joe actually might know this. I skipped a friend's wedding to go with my ex to his friend's wedding in Vermont. And he, after the wedding, out of nowhere, on the party bus, in the middle of nowhere, he dumped me. And I was
I did not know this.
Yeah,
never follow a man.
That's what it had to do. It ended up being with, don't follow a man. I should have gone to my friend's wedding here in California.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Out of it's great. And so then I mean, he's really drunk or whatever, but I was like, wait, I'm sorry. What he said was, can we still be friends? And I was like, what? And this is out of nowhere. This is out of nowhere.
In the spirit of the party bus.
And I went, what are you dumping me? And then I go, what the? And so the bus starts pulling over, and everybody's like drunk, being like, all right, everybody, is this your cabin? We're in the Robert Frost woods, everybody. And I got up, and people were trying to hug me. No, I won't be hugging anybody here because X here just dumped me. Good night!
You Nixoned?
I Nixoned.
Wow.
I Nixoned off the bus. And then the next day, somehow he did it, and we had to drive 2 hours to the Albany airport the next day for a connection flight, and then a flight back to LA.
He really thought you were going to be like, Friends sounds tight.
Wow, yeah. Right, exactly. So we drove 2 hours to Albany. We had fixed it somehow with like chewing gum and duct tape. And then we flew into Orlando for our first layover. As for landing, I burst into tears, and he goes, why are you crying? I go, I'm just scared you're going to dump me out of nowhere again. And he goes, well, we do need to talk. And I go, on a plane? We went from a bus to a plane? And I start eviscerating him in the Orlando airport. The lady at the kiosk working behind him and goes, yeah, girl.
So you got dumped on a bus, on a party
plane.
bus after an out-of-town
Yeah.
wedding, and at the happiest place on earth. Like, you've been literally dumped in the
as we're
most
landing.
ironic places you could get.
And then from Orlando to LA,
Oh my
they
God.
couldn't switch our seats, so we had to sit next to each other. And it was like the vegetable lasagna episode from Seinfeld, because the guy next to us didn't really speak much English and didn't want to move. So I was like,
Yikes.
The worst.
yeah, it was really bad. It's funny now, though.
No, never
It all
fall-
worked out. It all worked out.
Never follow a man.
There
Damn.
you go.
The one that comes to mind is a friend of mine. In my head, this is the same weekend, but maybe it was 2 weekends, but I'm just going to join them together. I think this was the same weekend. My friend wanted to go to there's a NASCAR racetrack near Los Angeles in Southern California.
Okay.
And he wanted to go to, I've never watched NASCAR, never seen NASCAR, don't know anything about NASCAR at this time, never been to a NASCAR race. He was like, I want to go. And it was like, my friend who was at that time was like he was the only person I knew in Los Angeles. And then his friend who I knew, who we were friendly with, and like his friend's boss. And who was a psychopath.
Oh my
and
God.
so he like we were like, we're gonna stay at his place for the weekend. We're like, all right, sure, whatever. And like I remember we went to get groceries, and he spent the entire time we were getting groceries, the boss like screaming into his cell phone. It's the only time I've ever actually seen a human being outside of a movie screaming down a cell phone at somebody. And then like we went to go get breakfast. He was just like, we're going to Tijuana right now.
What?
And he was driving.
Oh, no.
And so we just go. And then I was like, I don't know if I really want to. He was like, nope, we're doing it. And so like we just go to Tijuana, which
Oh, no.
And then like the one thing that like I'd never been to Tijuana, neither my friend and the other friend had, and even he was like, I don't know about this. And like the one thing that he said was like, don't follow anybody, and they're gonna try to get you to go into these clubs, and don't go into them. And we're like,
why
all
are
right.
you
And then
going
we get
somewhere?
there, and the boss gets out of the taxi and immediately follows somebody into one of the clubs. He's like, let's go. We're like, no, we're not doing that. We were there for like maybe 30 minutes, and all of us, we physically dragged him away. We're like, we're not having a good time right now.
What was in the club? What
Because
was the
you're
deal?
I don't know. We
Didn't go in, okay.
we grabbed him from the doorway and pulled him out of there. We're like, are you crazy?
Wow.
We would all like to go home, but we will leave you here if we have to. So we were there for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, not very long.
He's like,
It was awful.
Stop me! I'm trying to ruin my life.
Exactly.
please."
It's just like, I'm trying to get murdered. Will you
Yeah.
please stop trying to keep me from getting murdered? So that was a not fun diversion. And then the next day we
my
we go to the NASCAR race, and like we get there, and again, I know nothing about NASCAR. Nothing. And so it's the four of us, and the three of them are like, led of course by the boss. He was just like, because you can't bring anything in, like you can bring, I think
Oh,
you can
no.
bring beer, but you can't bring like hard liquor or something.
And
Anyway,
you
it's just
certainly
like,
can't bring the cocaine. This man.
yeah, whatever. I don't know what he was doing. But he was just like, I want to go to the car and drink. And it's just like, first of all, you sell beer every time. He's like, no, I want to drink the booze we have in the car. So my friend who was drunk, and then the boss, and then the other friend, all three of them are just like, we're gonna go, because you can go in and out.
Yeah.
It's just like, they're just like, we're gonna go, and I was just like, dude, I paid like $150 for this ticket. Like, I'm not gonna sit here for 10 minutes and then go with you and miss like 20 minutes of the race and come back. And I was just like, are you gonna be back? They're like, yeah, we're just gonna run out to the car and we'll be back in 20 minutes. It's like, okay, as long as you're gonna be back in 20 minutes, then I'm just gonna stay here, because we just got here, and if I want to enjoy this atmosphere.
My predicted outcome for this story keeps like getting worse
I know. I keep
and worse.
So many
all
turns.
three of them leave me alone at my first ever NASCAR event and come back 2.5 hours later
Wow.
with 10 laps to go. I've been sitting alone at a NASCAR race for 2.5 hours.
Watching
They
cars go in
all come
circles.
back like frolicked up. I mean, can't see straight. Like, I don't know, the grill, man, the Weber grill was gone. I'm like, what are you talking about? And so like, I'm screaming at particularly my friend who's the most drunk of all of them. It's just like, what do you want me to do, man? It's like, I'm screaming at him, just like, what the fuck? It's like, you brought me here, I've been sitting here by myself. But as I'm yelling at him, every 45. So like, it's like a movie where I'm yelling at him and I'm just like freaking frolicking. Every other word is frolic, but like it also gets drowned out every ticket is but it's just like, if you ever my mouth moving, like as I'm like red-faced and screaming at him, and then like we're driving home, and he's so messed up that he gets in a fight with his girlfriend, who I also knew. So then I'm driving his drunk ass home. I'm pissed at him, but I'm also on the phone with his girlfriend. Like he didn't mean it. He's just drunk.
We're on this party bus, and I thought it was time.
He was trying to party bus his girlfriend drunk on the way home from a NASCAR race. So like I'm trying to talk. Oh my god, it was
Wait until you get home.
Nightmare. Now, I will say this guy is really cool. He's a cool dude. He's a very successful and accomplished and happy person now. And
Steven Spielberg.
He just had his name is Bob Iger, and he runs Walt Disney Studios. No, he's a really cool dude. He just had a bad weekend.
Yeah,
we all had a really bad weekend. Of everything. It was like everything that could have gone horribly awry in one weekend all happened. It was the not fun version of every like party movie you've ever seen.
I'm here to tell you that might be pretty typical of a NASCAR race.
but my best friend got married a couple years ago, and his bachelor party was, we went to Kansas City to a NASCAR race,
and
we had a great time because we all stayed. First of all, we were all there watching.
No one went to Mexico.
There were no unannounced trips to Mexico that we were worried we wouldn't come back from.
No, NASCAR races are really, really fun.
It turns out they are. When you're not stewing for most of it, wondering where your friends are and if they literally abandoned you in the desert.
Don't abandon your friends in the desert.
Don't do it.
And that's where we're going to have to leave you. That is our lesson for
It's good when we have a lesson.
Those are your lessons. Don't follow a man. Don't abandon your friends in the desert. We have Movie Fights Live later today with Markia McCarty versus Greg Alba versus Trisha Hershberger. That is going to be amazing. Our Fan Friday post is going to be going up on the community tab. Get your questions in. Thank you all so much. I can't stop laughing. And we will see you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.